Okay, good morning, everyone. So I'm here with my fellow Bottoms Up Perspective co-founder, Timothy DeJesus. Um, he's well, influencer on LinkedIn. He does DJing every Friday. Today, proud to say, my friend now is an author. He produces a book recently published, I think paperback as well as electronic version. And
Yes,
the
sir.
title of the book is The Business of Time. So without further ado, just in a very brief nutshell, Timothy, just introduce yourself, maybe a quick one, 30 seconds, and let's proceed
Ab-
with the interview. Go ahead, Tim.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm Timothy DeJesus, as you already know, and I am the author of The Business of Time. I am a DJ. I have my own company, Dealer Masters LLC, which does automotive training and consulting. And I was in the car business for over 15 years. Uh, Rose from a salesperson all the way up to operations manager. I've worked pretty much every position in the auto dealership you can think of. Hence why I now train auto dealers on, how to sell cars, how to, work deals, do things like that. So, I'm very excited to be on the show, and I really appreciate you, Audra, for having me.
No problem, buddy. So let's begin. My first question really is out of personal interest, and maybe can also help me understand. So, what is this book about?
Absolutely. So the business of time is mainly about taking back control of your life. And, the reason I wrote the book was because, as I said, I was 15 years in the car business. I was working 50, 60 hours a week sometimes, making fantastic money, but I never felt as though I really had control of my own life. I wasn't getting close to retirement, despite the fact that I was making great money. And I was not happy when I really sat back and analyzed my life. I realized it was putting a tremendous strain on my mental health. And so I realized I needed to start doing things differently because it was not a very sustainable way of doing things. I couldn't see myself doing it for another 30 years. And so um, the book is really about what I started doing to change my perspective and also to change my trajectory towards retirement and to make myself feel happy. And so the quickest way I can explain it is that first of all, I started working for myself, which just about anybody has that possibility, but you don't have to work for yourself to be happy with your job. So that's not the crux of it. But for me, I started working for myself, which was a tremendously helpful for my mental health. But what I also started doing is I started looking at ways to make passive and residual income. So I wasn't forced to physically work to earn money every single day. I could do things that would earn me money when I wasn't working. And when you combine that in addition to the money I make while I'm working, now it makes the fact that I can retire sooner a more realistic goal, but then also it helps me breathe easier every single day knowing that I have assets coming in whether I'm working or not.
It's a very interesting perspective considering that the both of us are very close in our age group. I think we belong into the same age group. Probably have a little pretty different perspective about life and work, but I guess that's okay. We can reserve that for the next time. So just based on your executive summary introduction about why you did the book, I pick up two very strong ideas and points that you brought out. One is on business, one is on time.
Mhm.
So briefly speaking, what are your thoughts over business as well as time in terms of value, your personal values?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for me, I absolutely value time more than business. And the reason I value time more than business is you can't get time back. And I lost a lot of years with my little girl while I was working. And, as I started to realize that I was missing these times and missing these memories, I started to realize the money I was making was not worth the time it was costing me to be in that position. So business, of course, is important because the reality is, look, we all have to make money. We have to. I mean, there's very few people that can live a minimalist lifestyle and can work until they're 75, 80 years old and be completely happy doing so and just constantly working. You know, some people are able to do it. For the majority of people, I believe they don't, work tends to be a struggle, especially depending on the position that they're in. And so, I believe the time is more valuable. And again, that's why in the book, I I say that if you can find these ways to make money where you don't have to work, you can claim that time back. And then what you choose to do in that time is up to you. Now, I've claimed time back and I've still ended up working at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, but it was for something that I wanted to do. And I was doing it on my schedule, not on anyone else's schedule. And it was an investment in myself because what I was doing was going to directly be attributable back to me and my works. So that's a choice that I was making. I wasn't forced to do anything against my will that I was unhappy about, if that makes sense.
Of course it does. I think to my own point, everyone needs to have their own unique view of how their life should look like, how they want to spend their time, and what the picture of retirement would look like. Just
Mm-hmm.
like your view of retirement is going to be very different from mine, because
Mm-hmm.
we are now thinking and being obsessed with different things. So naturally, that end goal and the North Star that's guiding us is going to be different. Our
Mm-hmm.
paths will be different. But what's really important is that it is not mutually exclusive. You can have a good life, but we don't have to be jealous of each other because we are on a different path and yet we are self-actualizing. So I
Mm-hmm.
think I think that's the important thing, is to celebrate diversity and not differences.
Absolutely.
That's my point, and I'm not going to politics. Don't worry, I know what you're thinking. I'm not going to politics. We can go
No.
offline on that one. Um, so I think just based on what you mentioned to my second question, it is really a point of revelation, possibly a reckoning of sorts,
Mm-hmm.
because your little goal probably brought you a different angle in life, and therefore it cranked your mental gears. So that is really a point of reflection, thinking through your journey. But of course, that journey leads to your view of retirement. So tell me,
Mm-hmm.
Timothy DeJesus, what is your picture of an ideal retirement? Yours.
Yeah. So my view of an ideal retirement is to be able to retire early. Early. Like, I'd like to be 55 completely, to the point where I don't have to work, and I still plan on having income coming in through sources, but at the same time, it's not something where I still need to physically work. And obviously, I would like to move that time frame up, because personally, look, I enjoy working, especially when it comes to DJing. I'm passionate about DJing, right? So if I'm DJing and I'm making money, that doesn't feel like work to me, right? Um, so I can do that and be totally fine and make money and I'm happy, and that's not work to me because I'm passionate about it and I enjoy it. But what I don't want to do, and the whole reason why I set off on my own personal journey, was I didn't want to be 60 years old, still working for other people in the car business, still with the same problems I had when I was 35. Now I'm 65 and I'm in the same place. And maybe I have enough to retire, but not comfortably. And then, if you look at life and you're like, oh, I'm 70 years old and I have to start considering going back into the workforce instead of being able to sit back and retire. For me, that's what I didn't want to have happen. And my personal belief is that most people, if they're being honest with themselves, are like me, in the fact that if they could choose between working for someone or in a job that they hate, but just continuing to work to stick it out, to make money for themselves, or to have the option of doing things that they enjoy with their time and making money on their own schedule, I believe most people would choose option B, which is to not have to work and be able to work on their own schedule and make money as they see fit, but not be required to do so, to be stuck in the loop, and in some cases be miserable for years at their job, but doing so just to support their family because they didn't know any other way. And what got me writing this book is I know there are a lot of people in my personal life, when we grew up, we only knew one way. You get a job and you work and you try to save for retirement. And there was no guarantee that you were going to retire at any certain age. And I wasn't taught about passive or residual income because at the same time, it wasn't as big as it is now. There weren't as many ways to earn money. But there's a lot of people who are like me, I'm 37, that still don't know any other way. And there's some kids that are even younger that the sooner you grasp this concept that, hey, there's more than one way to make money and make quite a bit of it, the sooner you do that, the sooner you can start trending toward retirement and saving toward retirement and being able to do the things you want to do in life. So, that's why I wrote the book, because I truly believe most people, if you said, look, all things considered, would you rather spend time doing things that you enjoy, or would you rather spend your time working? They're going to choose this if the option is there. And the option is there if you make the money, if you know how to make the money, and if you could do it without having to work for somebody in a job that you hate. So that's why I wrote the book.
That's a very interesting proposition because I'm with you on that point where a lot of us, we inherit the viewpoints from our elders, meaning to say that picture of retirement is what is being passed down to us either by our parents, our aunts, our uncles, verbally, either that or through them being our role models, meaning we watch what they do and we learn along the way. I think most young kids, they do that. They don't do what you tell them to, they do what they see you do. So if they see you continue to go out there to work 6 days a week, 9 to 5 and things like that, it gets anchored. Okay, so that's what daddy has been doing. That's working life, right? So so it kind of shape it. And I think where we are aligned, which is the idea of retirement, it's really, we have not progressed as a whole. We have not walked out of the industrial age while we are already information age at its maturity, where we are still pretty much stuck to that old idea of what a retirement is, and that is, give the company 40 years, the same company 40 years will take care of you. There's a pension, there's retirement fund, and then you can go enjoy your life. But at this point, I do question how many of our family members actually are still on that scheme. My own family, none, no longer, because all my grandparents have passed away. Their peers, they have passed away. My parents have not heard about pensions. They have heard about it, they don't have any, right? So that age has passed. But we are still being drowned in the same old lessons, right? Work for a company for many years, they'll take care of you, and blah 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 blah. And apparently it's not working. And I echo that sentiment from you, because today, I think the biggest mistake that we have in our education is that we don't learn enough in terms of modern day history as well as economics. Back in those days, in the industrial age, I don't think we are looking at a global debt to GDP ratio that is greater than 100%. I don't think governments can print trillions in seconds.
Yes.
Now that's appalling, right? But people don't think too much about it. It's like, it's a different matter. But it's not a different matter. It filters down. It filters down. So I'm totally with you on that. And I think you have a very brilliant view of retirement. I may or may not subscribe to that. But I think the important thing is that we ought to have our own view of what retirement is. We should have. It's our life. So probably as question 3B that comes out of this, because this is really a topic that the both of us can go on forever, but the interview has to come somewhere. And that is, if you are at the point, so if we can fast forward, you at the point of retirement, now looking back, what is that base that supports your retirement? Is it about financials, or is it about your achievements? What is that?
Well, I think for anybody, it has to be financials, because regardless, retirement is short-lived if you don't have enough money to support yourself, period, right? I mean, that's just what it is. So, you know, I think it's based in financials, but the reality is, and here's my 100% view on it, right? And I think I talked about this a little bit earlier, but you know, if I'm 50 years old, but I'm doing something that I enjoy for work, yeah, I'll work, but I'll work on my schedule. And I still plan on having assets coming in that are supporting me. So I'm not 100% quote unquote retired per se, but at the same time, I'm doing things that I enjoy, and I'm doing them at my pace. And if I decided that I want to go out for a month and travel to Europe or to Singapore and visit friends and, you know, do all sorts of things, I have the means to do it. I have the time to do it, and I'm just going to do it. And again, I think this is a viewpoint that most people would want to be able to do that. So, you know, the difference in being middle class and being wealthy a lot of times is education, and not necessarily college education as much as education about ways to earn money, about, you know, the value of your time, and also just about access. You know, wealthy people sometimes have different access levels, but you gain those access levels by doing things and collaborating and networking with people who can allow you these accesses. And so again, you know, my book, I'm not wealthy yet. I plan on being wealthy. I plan on being wealthy sooner than later. But in the grand scheme of things, this is for the layperson to do things that wealthy people have been doing for decades. They've been doing it for decades, and they just, nobody knows. Nobody was taught this. Again, I agree with you wholeheartedly that we saw our parents do something, and we thought that was what life was. And you know, what I began to learn very quickly was that is not how life has to be, especially because the things that my parents were doing, so many things didn't exist back then. You know, you couldn't make money by producing content back then. There was no social media, right? The stock market wasn't as prevalent as it is today. There's, you know, like there's so many ways to earn royalties and money when you're not working. And a lot of that just didn't exist during those days. Or it existed, but again, it existed to people who had access. But the playing field has been leveled. Almost everybody has access, but now you just need the education. And then once you have the education, then it comes down to execution. How do you do it? Well, that's up to you. And I completely agree with your viewpoint on retirement too, right? You and I don't have to have the same vision of retirement. And, you know, in the book, I express as much. Like, look, if you work a 9 to 5, but your job is stress-free, and you don't need the money, but you do it because, hey, this is just additional income and it's not bothering me to do this, God bless. That's beautiful. That's nirvana, right? You can work a 9 to 5. You don't have to punch the clock. You don't have to be like us entrepreneurs, where we might wake up at 3 a.m., have an idea and be like, I got to write this down before I forget it, right? If you have that 9 to 5 that earns you a nice income, but you don't necessarily have to work, there's nothing wrong with that either, right? It's all about a matter of personal perspective. And ultimately, it's about finding happiness for yourself. But I believe in why the idea of retirement ties into happiness is because if you don't have time, if you feel stuck in that loop, that 9 to 5 in a job that you hate, right? Well, first of all, you're not trending towards retirement. And second of all, you don't feel like you have control of your own time. And so if that makes you feel unhappy, if your unhappiness is career related, it doesn't have to be. And that's why I wrote the book, because it was a lesson I learned, and I learned the hard way. I worked 15 years for other people, you know, really hard and really long hours before something clicked and said, there's got to be a different way to do this thing.
Oh, trust me,
And
I
so
know that. You know, like I work for my aunt and she didn't pay me a single dime. I know that. I know how
yeah,
that feels. Yep.
right. So like, you know, I realized like, okay, there's different ways to do this thing, and I started researching. And my whole purpose and premise for the book is to give people that access. Like, it doesn't matter if you're poor or middle class. Take the time, get educated, You know, the book is $9.99 everywhere. So it's $10. It's less than 2 cups of Starbucks, right? But it's $10 to educate yourself on all these different ways to earn and how to maximize your personal value so you can actually negotiate for higher wages. Because that's something that a lot of people don't do either. They just take a job, they don't negotiate for higher wages. But guess what? $5,000 over the course of 10 years is $50,000. Over the course of 30 years, $150,000. We're talking about retirement. $150,000 goes a long way in retirement. So, but again, if you're not negotiating for that additional 5,000 every year, you know, it's the difference between 50,000 and 55,000. It doesn't sound like a lot. It's a huge difference when you extrapolate it over time. And that's something, again, I talk about in the book is that, you know, if you're able to maximize your personal value and you are a person of value, it leads to better job opportunities. And it leads to when it's time for a raise, you can say, I've earned this. And here's why I've earned this, because I've done all this for the company. So I'm asking for a $5,000 annual raise because I've earned it. And so, you know, these are all the things that are discussed in the book. But, you know, like I said, nobody has to have the same view on retirement, but everybody has the right to feel happy, and they should. And that's what I personally believe. And that's something that's discussed throughout the course of the book.
I find this mini segment very interesting because when I ask you for your opinion whether your ideal retirement is backed by financials or achievement, you said it's financials. But throughout the entire recount of your idea, you did not mention any form of I'm gonna be an XX millionaire. Like so the financials type to me having 5 million in the bank or net worth 5 million, net worth 10 million. It's very interesting in that point, and probably as just as a concluding question, you mentioned a lot about assets. So I presume when I get the book finally from Jeremy, I'm gonna read some of that. But just as a sneak preview, what kind of assets that you are talking about? So,
Absolutely.
But of course, a disclaimer to everyone: we are not financial planners. Okay.
Yes.
We're just discussing our experience, and of course, I will have a different kind of asset acquisition strategy, or rather, a different portfolio maker. But let's focus on you. So, what kind of assets are you talking about, Tim?
Absolutely. So, you know, now a lot of people are on social media, right? And we create content, and a lot of people don't realize that some of these channels, YouTube, TikTok to name, right? They have creator funds. And the more views you get, because the mentality for the social media channel is the more time people are spending on the social media channel. And, you know, the book, not the book, the special, The Social Dilemma, talks at length about this, right? But the more time people are spending on social media viewing whatever content, the more opportunity that social media channel has to advertise to you, because that's how they make their money, right? And so now we're all creating content, but if you create content, once you get to this creator fund level, on YouTube it's 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. And on TikTok, it's, you know, it's 10,000 followers, but then they have their own little stuff behind the scenes. They kind of vet you per se, right? But in the grand scheme of things, once you get to the point where you can earn money, now as you produce content, that content earns you money. Instead of us, like so many people post on Facebook 3 times a day, there's nothing for it. You're not getting anything for it. Why? Why not spend that time to post on a channel that will pay you, right? So that's one way. Another way, I mean, you know, listen, I wrote the book to educate people, but at the end of the day, the book is an asset that somebody can buy at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I'm getting paid. I might be sleeping, but I'm earning. So you can do things like write books. If you're into music, you can produce music. And especially in today's world, everybody's streaming. So Spotify, Tidal, if you're a creator of, again, content, because that's content, but if you're a creator of content, somebody's listening to your music at 2 a.m., it may be pennies, but you're getting paid. Every time somebody listens to your content, you're getting paid. right? So there's production credits and things of that nature. Obviously, there's the stock market. I talk at length about the stock market because a lot of people's 401ks and, just their general retirement account, IRAs, are stock driven. But a lot of people don't take the time to learn about the stock market. And also a lot of people blindly invest in a 401k and leave the money there and let somebody else manage it. And in a lot of cases, what I start to notice too, again, I learned all these lessons the hard way. My 401k was not really earning for me. It wasn't making me money. It was depositing, and I was getting the company match percentage, but the investments weren't earning for me. And as soon as I took control of my portfolio, I started making serious money in the stock market. And again, I'm not, like you said, we're not financial advisors. And I've taken my bumps and bruises along the way, but I'm way up this year versus if I would have just continued to invest year after year after year into a 401k without it actually earning me money. And I learned, like, you can't let somebody else manage your money in this situation unless they're a professional and they're really good at it. But as soon as I started taking my money and investing it in stocks that were growth stocks, that money turned into a much bigger pile of money. So, these are just a couple examples of things that you can do. I list out a few more, but I also tell people, like, listen, in the grand scheme of things, there's probably hundreds of ways to earn passive and residual income. So research it. Like, don't just take this little chapter, take the time and look at every which way you can do it. And I talk about self-employment the same way, right? Look at all the ways you can be self-employed and see if something strikes your fancy. If you choose to go down that path, it's a risky proposition, but look at all the different ways you can be self-employed. Maybe you're like, oh, I'm passionate about this. I can do this to make money. Now I enjoy what I do for work. And if I can create these digital assets that I speak of, you can still be paid while you're not working and have money coming into your bank account, despite the fact that you're not on the clock. And so, when I talk about assets, those are just a few examples of things that you can do. But in the grand scheme of things, there's plenty of ways that I didn't mention in the book, but I know are out there for passive and residual income. And it's all about a matter of personal perspective. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do the stock market, right? Because some people may not they don't have the patience or they don't want to do that. Fine, don't do the stock market, but there's still 13 other things you can do to make passive and residual income in other ways. So it's a matter of, like I said, personal perspective. Do what you're comfortable with and something you're going to be passionate and excited about. And then you can make money that way. And you can have these assets earning for you. Like I said, I still plan to have assets earning for me well after the fact I'm quote unquote retired. So I'll still be making money, but I won't have to physically say, okay, I need to show up here if I want to make money. I need to do this if I need to make money. No, the money is already coming in because these assets have been built and people are purchasing when I'm not. I could be on vacation for a month and, still earning.
I think that's a very brilliant viewpoint. I personally, I'm also in the journey of acquiring assets, but the thing is, most people, they only think about acquiring assets that has been built by others. We can build ourselves too. And like you
Yes.
correctly mentioned, when it comes to intellectual property, when it comes to digital products, we can create it now. It's really not a problem. The way that you have been trying to grow your YouTube and TikTok, I pursue that path too, but not really on these two platforms. I pursue it via Medium because it's also based on readership. So the more I can get, the more it comes. So I think we are aligned in that, and I'm very glad that you did mention the stock market as an alternative, but not the only thing.
No.
It's not the only thing. When it comes to assets, we can build them and we can acquire them. So from a grander scheme of things, you could build a business and sell it, right? Collecting revenue month on month, profits month on month, and then sell it. That's your exit strategy. That's also about assetization of your expertise. That's what I think. And I think we have for some reason that we are in different time zones, different countries, different experiences. It brings us together. the road converges, because the moment we start thinking about um, age-old notions about what a retirement is, how life should be, people start opening up. Like, okay, so I can't save. This is no longer the era that we can save our way to retirement. We've got to invest. And then we start off with, okay, what can we invest in, right? Given residual
Mhm.
income and things like that. And the mainstream media will keep talking about the stock market, the bond market, the real estate market. And the only reason they're talking about it is because it is so under the limelight that
Mhm.
everyone fails to see something outside of that.
Yeah.
And which is true. I mean, in the US, there's only two main markets that are really within the focus of retail investors. One's the stock market, and the other one's the real estate market. If you are professional, you can tap into the debt or the bonds market. But then again, unless you are a fund manager, I don't think you have the access. So I think you're
Right.
absolutely right, and we can build on that. Not a problem.
Absolutely.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Tim.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say no, and listen, the stock market just for me is a tremendous vehicle because if you know what you're doing, you can put a nice chunk of money into it and get returns fairly quickly. What I also talk about in the book is that, look, a 401k may not be the best way sometimes. Like sometimes you could do a 401k. Maybe it's not for everybody though, because you got to keep in mind, like a 401k, when you plant that money, if you ever want to pull it out, you're probably going to pay a penalty before you're 60 years old. So if you're putting some money into that and then you need it, you're going to pay a penalty on that money and you're going to get taxed on it again as soon as you pull it out. So a 401k is good, but you can also still just trade in the market. You can have a trading account and trade in the market and you'll pay taxes on it at the end of the year, but you have access to the money immediately. So my whole goal in saying that is to tell people, look, just don't take one way because it was, somebody told you, hey, you got to invest in your 401k. That's not for everybody. It's for some people. It's not for everybody. Some people, if you're not going to manage your investments, maybe it's not the best way to put your money away. Maybe you can keep that money in your pocket, but you build these assets as we talked about in a different way. And you still have the money accessible to yourself, but you're saving for retirement nonetheless, just not in a traditional 401k that if, like I said, you work for a company for a year and then you leave that company, now you have this money, you're not making any money in their 401k. You have to shift it to a retirement account to continue to invest in it. But except now it's in a retirement account, you're not with that company. The new company you go to doesn't have a 401k. And now you have this money that is the small amount of money that if you want to pull it out and you want to have access to it, you're going to pay for it. And that's, again, people don't think about this stuff because it's just, we all, not all, but a lot of us were born and raised to do, like you said, you go get a job, you work for a company for 40 years, maybe they got a 401k, you invest in the 401k, and then when you're 65 years old, you're ready to retire, whatever it is. And in today's world, especially with the expenses being so high, you may not, if you have two children, you may not be ready to retire at 65 on that plan anymore. So we all have to, I think, look at things a little bit differently. And like I said, you said it best, right? We don't have to do things the same way. You don't have to do it my way. All I want to do is point you in the right direction. The book is a short read to point you in the right direction. And then what you can do is you can go to my YouTube channel where I expand on a lot of these topics, especially like personal branding. I have an entire series on my YouTube channel dedicated to personal branding because I believe personal branding is essential in today's world. If you're not creating a brand for yourself, yet you're spending hours on social media, but you yourself don't have a personal brand, you're doing yourself a disservice because you're spending a lot of time without having any assets to show for it. And so I talk extensively in the book about a personal brand. And then I have an entire series on my YouTube channel dedicated to personal branding because personal branding is so important. And we've talked about this on Bottoms Up, which is certain people, their personal brand is the driver of their business ventures. Elon Musk is a perfect example. Gary Vee, we've talked about Gary Vee a ton. And whether you like him or hate him or think he's a kook or think he's awesome, it doesn't matter. You know who he is. His brand is the driver of his business ventures. His name, his face is the driver of his business ventures. And he doesn't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars advertising because he's putting out content for free. And he's staying in your face. And people are saying, what's this about? And he's got your attention. So again, it's just these things that I've witnessed over time and started to realize, okay, and I want to say something too real quick about this, because I know we've been on for a little bit, but you mentioned like, LinkedIn influencer, right? My goal is not to be an influencer. I don't necessarily want to sell other people's products and make money for it, right? If anything, I want to be of influence for myself, for my own products, but not to be an influencer who somebody's going to say, hey, I want to pay you $50,000 to advertise Coca-Cola. And I say, well, I don't drink Coca-Cola, but sure, I'll take the 50K. I don't necessarily like that plan, because if I don't believe in the product, and it's not that I don't believe in Coca-Cola. Every now and again, I'll have one. But for me to push a product, especially, I'm not going to push a product that I don't believe in at all. You can't wave a check in front of me big enough for me to say, yes, I think this is a crap product, but I'm going to tell you to buy it because it's paying me. That I don't subscribe to. So I wouldn't be a great social media influencer, because you can't pay me enough to sell something that I'm not going to. I don't subscribe to the belief system. So, if anything, the personal brand for people should be an influence for yourself. And there's a lot of people out there who are selling things like merch, which is merchandise, and selling t-shirts and stuff, but people are buying it because they're bought into the person, not necessarily because they want the t-shirt. It could be a really cheesy t-shirt, but somebody says, I'm going to support that person because I like them, and whatever. I want to show off that I support so-and-so, and I'm wearing their merch. I'm wearing their t-shirt. And they did that because they're bought into the person, not because they want the stupid t-shirt. The t-shirt could be dumb as hell, but they're buying it because they like that person and they want to support that person, and they're invested in that person. And that's the power of a personal brand. So, that's something that I really believe strongly, that, you have to have that personal brand.
So just one final question. What's your brutally honest advice to people who believe in retirement planning but are lazy to do anything about it? Brutally honest advice. What could they do?
Right. Brutally honest is just take the time to research your options, right? You can do so by, like I said, investing in my book. If you don't want to invest in my book, it doesn't matter. Like, some people will buy my book, some people won't, right? It's fine. But if you don't, look at all the different ways you can earn these assets. Look at ways you can, retire, whether it's the stock market. Maybe the stock market is for you. You just don't know about it. Maybe some people have $100,000 in a 401k. They could be making serious money with this money, but they're not paying attention to it. So it's sitting there idle, maybe making very small gains, but you could do a lot of damage in the stock market with $100,000 if you pay attention. So, I think it's so important for people to just look at all of their options, not just say, hey, this is what it is, or this is what it is. Take the time, research your options, because there's a lot of stuff that you can do that you can make money with that you truly enjoy. You just don't know it's there for you. And so take the time, research that, find out what you want to do and what's going to make you happy. Because ultimately the end game, look, if you want to work till you're 70, but you're going to be happy working till you're 70, who cares, right? That's cool. Work until you're 70. If you're happy, if you love your life and you wake up every morning and you go to sleep at night and you feel happy in your life, then God bless, right? You don't have to do it my way. You don't have to do it Aldrich's way. You don't have to do it anybody's way. But if you're not that person, which I believe that person's a very rare person, if you're not that person, take the time and figure out what can you do to make money for yourself while being happy, and start to reclaim some of your time back. So that's my advice. Like, just do your homework. Don't just don't just do what your parents did, like we discussed, right? Don't just do what your parents did. Don't just do something because your friend is doing it. Take the time, look at all the ways you can earn, and then see what works best for you. And then once you know what works best for you and things that you enjoy, create some assets for yourself so you don't have to work all the time just to make a buck.
And I think that's a brilliant concluding statement to make because whether we like it or not, we work for our future, we work towards our retirement. But the important thing is also to realize what are we working for?
Hmm.
There must be something within that element of work that comes back to us. And I think, as you correctly pointed out, and I totally agree with you, is that if we put up 100% of our effort and probably 40 to 50% comes back in the form of assets, whether we create them or we acquire them, it puts us in a much better position leading towards the life that we want to lead. And that is really what we want. Um, it's important because the first 20 years of our life, we probably don't have much choice. I mean, if we think about
Right.
Isabel, if we think about Jennifer and Kevin's children or Jeremy's children, we probably grew up without a mind of our own, and that's really how we come into being. So then the question is, do we want to continue to surrender more of our lives to things that we don't believe in and people who don't really give a shit about us? I mean, that's
Hmm.
the most important question, right? The business of time. It's really a business of time, and it's
Hmm.
a function of what we want to do in our life, and that is reflected in our retirement planning. That's really my take after speaking to you. So thank you for that, Timothy. And would you like to just give a last punch in terms of talking about your book, slightly where to get them,
Yeah,
what are options?
absolutely. So, a couple ways you can get the book. It's available both on Amazon and Barnes and Noble in paperback and ebook format. It's also available on my website, bizoftime.com. I highly recommend you check out bizoftime.com. And the reason is, if you felt compelled to check out the book, there's plenty more about the book as well as a little bit more about me and my history on the website. You can purchase the book directly through the website, but you can also purchase a signed copy directly through the website. So if you'd like a signed copy, you can get that directly from the website. If if you have Amazon Prime, you want free 2-day shipping, just get it from Amazon. But or you can do the ebook version. But at the end of the day, like I said, I recommend, if you guys want to learn more, check out my website, bizoftime.com. You have many options to get the book. It's going to be coming out on Audible soon as well, so that people can listen to the book as opposed to reading. The other thing I'm going to tell everybody too is I highly suggest you subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I'll be curating the series, The Lessons from the Business of Time, in the next coming weeks. And what that is it's a series designated for people who aren't readers, because there are some people who aren't readers but would still like to learn some of these lessons. So I'm actually going to break down the book chapter by chapter. It's not going to be me reading the chapters, because that's kind of boring, right? But it's going to be more so a summary of each chapter to help people. If you're not maybe a reader but you still want to learn these lessons, you can go to my YouTube channel. You can still learn from that, but also my YouTube channel is not just dedicated to that. There's plenty of videos on my YouTube channel to help people remain relevant in the business world and learn some of these lessons that we're talking about, especially about personal branding. I highly recommend you check out the series on personal branding, because I believe in it. The personal brand that I've built for myself has changed my life. It's absolutely changed my life. It's given me access to so many opportunities that I didn't have or wouldn't have had previously if I hadn't invested my time into my personal brand. So I highly recommend people check that out too. But you can purchase the book. It's $9.99 everywhere. Price doesn't change. Like I said, it's to educate yourself on how to get a better life for yourself. Sacrifice 2 cups of Starbucks and go buy the book.
Well said, Timothy. Thank you for coming on to my channel.
Thank you so much for having me, brother. I appreciate you as always.
See you this Thursday. All
Thanks,
right
brother.
then.